What's up, bookworms? This is Megan coming at you with another Cantina conversation. Today's episode features a chat with Sandra Chwialkowska talking about her book, The Ends of Things. That book is available now. This was such a fun conversation with Sandra. Her career before writing this book was actually in television production, so it was really cool to see how her career had prepared her for writing a book and comparing the two types of projects. But either way, I'll let you guys get to it. Here is Sandra. Today we've got Sandra Chwialkowska. I'm so sorry. I'm going to try my best. But we're talking about The Ends of Things. That book is available now. Sandra, thank you so much for joining me today. I just finished this book. It's fresh in my brain. I really enjoyed your suspense storytelling, and I felt for Laura. It was easy to feel for her and wonder as the reader, follow the clues and follow her path, her like process of confusion and all that. And we'll get into it. So I'm excited to dig deeper today.
Thank you so much for having me. And no, I'm really happy to be here and to get into it with you.
Perfect. Absolutely. To get started, can you share like a summary of the book so that people can follow along with the conversation?
Sure. So, The Ends of Things is a psychological suspense about a solo female traveler who goes missing from a luxury apartment in the Bahamas, becomes fixated on this woman, and becomes embroiled in the police investigation that unfolds.
Yeah. Yeah. To
Yeah.
put it lightly. I know. Yeah. We'll try to be spoiler free. Yeah. I felt a little confused and irritated with her about how all that. Can you share your background? And because it's your debut novel, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you share, like, your background, how you brought this story to the world, like, maybe how any of your previous experiences professionally, personally prepared you for this project, stuff like that?
Absolutely. I had wanted to be a novelist since I was a kid. It had been a long held dream of mine, but I also love television and film. And so I also had aspirations to be a screenwriter. And professionally, the screenwriting thing happened first. So I've been a career television writer for, God, 15 years now. And most of the time I'd be staffing in writers' rooms, originally in Toronto in Canada, where I'm from, and more recently in Los Angeles, where I
What
live
kind of
now.
productions? Would it be, like, scripted or, like, talk shows or what?
Scripted drama,
Oh,
procedurals,
no
a bit
wonder
of
you got that knack for that suspense and
yeah,
that
I
eerie
do. I love
and
a good
yeah.
thriller. A lot of cop shows, some action adventure, a lot of mystery, basically investigative storytelling. I really love that. So that was my professional background. And when I wasn't staffing in a writer's room on my off time, I wrote what you would call a practice novel, like a novel that doesn't sell, basically.
A desk drawer authors call a desk drawer novel.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one that I actually finished and got representation for, but was never able to sell it. And that was some years ago. So it had always been this dream of mine. And then with this, I got the idea for the story when I was on vacation. So I had perennially been single workaholic. I was always working.
Mm,
I'd always wanted to go to a luxury beach resort, but I didn't really have the confidence to go by myself. And so one day, I found myself in this new relationship, and I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. And so I had a break from work. We went to this beautiful resort. We arrive, and there's all these couples on the beach, this sort of boutique resort. And then among the couples, I saw this one woman, and then I saw her alone at the restaurant and alone at the snack bar and alone walking the beach. And I was like, I think she's here at this couples resort by herself.
yeah.
And I was initially intrigued, and then I became jealous. What does she have that I don't have? Then I found myself getting angry. And so I had all these weird, complicated emotions about a stranger. And when I came home from the vacation, I was still thinking about her and these sort of intense emotions. So I knew I had to unpack it. So I wrote a short story at first. Then I thought maybe this could be a feature film. And so I actually
Mm,
wrote an outline for a feature script. But when I finished the outline and read it back to myself, I realized all my favorite parts were the sort of interior thoughts of the protagonist, of Laura, and her musings and her thoughts and her thought process. And I realized this is a story about a catastrophizer, about someone who is her own worst enemy, who imagines the worst case scenario. I wanted to explore obsession, female obsession, and a lot of that would have to be cut from a screenplay. And I realized the best way to explore what was most exciting to me was in a different form, in the form of a novel. But I had never published a novel before. I've never gotten an MFA in creative writing. So it was very intimidating to approach writing something that was so long. And so the only skill set I had at my disposal was my experience in television writing.
Mm,
So I approached the manuscript, the structure of writing a thriller, the way I would approach breaking a season of television, basically. So
yeah.
if a series has 13 episodes in a season, I broke my novel into 13 chapters and I followed a
Okay.
similar arc with cliffhangers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's smart. You gotta work with what you know, and
There you go.
then yeah, I can imagine because I've spoken with a couple of authors who, yeah, they've worked in either writing stage plays or script writing or even, and they say the same thing. Like some of it, like you just have to that formula that you're used to and then find a way to make prose out of it versus lines and scripts and like stage direction and stuff like that. And so I think yeah, I just think it's so fascinating how the talent's there. You just got to figure out how to adapt and transfer those skills into this new thing. So I thought that was very cool that you were able to like figure it out and that the whatever the universe spoke to you and said, "Hey, wait, there's a way to do this. Go down this path." Because and you're not the only authors I speak to. Not a lot I would say there's a handful of them that don't have that formal education. Maybe they go to workshops and stuff like that, or they go, like, tutorials and whatever, or they just read so much. They just read so much and figure out pick what they like. So I that's what I imagine is what, like, your experience with script writing or TV for that medium and to take those pieces of suspense. Because I really did full disclosure, I liked this book, but the ending, it pissed me off because, like but that's how you know you got me, and that's how I was like, "Wait a second." But that doesn't mean I didn't like the book. It was just like, "Wait." Like, I felt things, and then so still a credit to you. But, yeah, I just remember thinking, like, "She's pulling me along very well, and I wanna know." And it's funny how you said, "Oh, it's, like, something that seems so long," but it's like you said, like, it's a beach read, and you could finish it leisurely. You don't have to, like, hunker down and pay too much attention other than the fact that what Laura is, like, feeding the reader, right? And oh, kind of thing because this you wrote this in what, first person, right?
A
Or
close third, a close third.
okay, yeah, closer. So how did you? Because I know you said this is really closely based on, like, things that you experienced and things that you were feeling. So how did you decide between that, like, first person versus third person?
Sure. When I read mysteries, my favorite kind of character is the kind that's not an unreliable narrator, but a character who doesn't know they're unreliable. And so that
Yeah.
was something that was important to me with Laura, is like someone who, and I also wanted to write a grounded mystery. One of my pet peeves with a lot of thrillers is they just go off the deep end at one point and you're along for the
Mm,
ride, but at a certain point, it's a the buy-in is too great. And so you're on it for the roller coaster ride, but I was interested in, can I write about something that could actually happen and could be to some degree relatable in terms of
yeah,
the character on the journey that they're on. And just to your point earlier about the ending, it's true. This is in the category of suspense, but
yeah.
it's no spoilers, but it is a very unconventional ending. And it plays with a lot of the tropes that we're familiar with in a missing woman storyline.
Mhm.
And that's one of the sort of undercurrent themes in the novel, is exploring that and commenting on that as a genre, in addition to it being a novel about female friendship, female agency. So I wanted it to be in third person, but close, so that we have access to Laura's private thoughts, but she's not a typical unreliable narrator. Oh, just in the terms of beach book, I would categorize it as that, or like a thinking woman's beach read. For me, one of the hardest things one of the biggest challenges I have when I plan a vacation is picking the book I want to bring with me.
Yeah.
Like some people, it's harder for me to pick the book than to pick the outfits or plan the
It's
itinerary
so
because
yeah.
I want a book that will check certain boxes. Like I want the book to be escapist and a page turner, but I also want the themes to linger after I've finished reading it. And so I love thrillers, but often they leave me a bit empty when I'm finished. And I love
Yeah.
literary fiction for the language, for the insights, for the beautiful sentences, but they're not always page turners. And so part of this book was also I want to write a book that I would want to take on vacation with
Yeah.
me that keeps me turning the pages, but is about something a little deeper.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts. So I love when I said, yeah, that and it pissed me off. I said it was like in a good way because I was like, you're absolutely right. It's a little unconventional. And I'm trying to structure my thoughts because I think I wanna comment on so many things. So, yeah, the beach read thing, it's so funny because my husband and I, back in August, we celebrated our 10-year and we went to
Oh,
Hawaii, and
congrats.
it was like a yeah, thanks. And it was like a 9 to 10-day trip, and so I totally understand, wait, which books am I gonna read? I read 5 books
Wow.
because that's really just straight up, I just had time to myself, and my husband, like, he's the swimmer, he loves, like, the pool, he's a fish, and our kids are the same way, like, you stick them in a pool, they're good for, like, hours, and I'm just there, I'll chill here and be family time, but I'll have a book in front of me. So, I, like it was just hours on hours of chilling. We did, like, some touristy stuff but we did a lot of lazy stuff too, and a lot of the free time, it was just like, "Okay, pulling back up my book, pulling back up my book." And it was really yeah, it was really funny because I was like, 5 books is enough for 10 days, right? Almost like the outfit thing, like, you go for, "Okay, I'm going for a week and I'm planning for 3 weeks." Like, I'm planning
Yeah.
every possible scenario. So, yeah, I totally get it. And the other thing I wanted to comment on also is, yeah, like, there's a lot like, a running theme is, like, women's safety, like, female friendship, female because Lauren, she's or Laura, she's we get a lot of her backstory here and there and find out, like, the person she is in her past and things that are, like, slowly we realize as a reader, like, what bothers her and what's still bothering her, and so I thought it was just, like, she always wanted to travel, and she just didn't think it was a good idea to go by herself. Whereas me, I'm like, I'm 38, so now at this point in my life, I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go on vacation by myself, that sounds amazing."
Yeah, same.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Like, I as long as you're, like, smart about it, you're aware of your surroundings, you check, like, you put your fail safes and all that stuff, you should be good. But yeah, like Laura's character, I didn't think it was a good idea. And then, yeah, when she sees Diana, she's, wait a second, like, how is she doing this? What's
Yes.
going on?
But
And like,
then
what,
when she disappears, are all my fears legitimate?
yeah, exactly. And then she can't let it go. And then, so yeah, no, I definitely want to expand on that. Like the women, just like women in general, we have to worry about so much more than men do, not just traveling, but just, like, living our everyday lives, and you hear it all the time, and it's just I don't for me personally, I'm so comfortable by myself, and I will go by myself, like, almost anywhere, like, I don't care. I don't but then at the same time, I'm like, I think it's because I've had the luxury of knowing that I don't know if it's a luxury, I'm just, like, prepared. So I'm like, there's that little bit of paranoia that kinda keeps me safe, where I'm, like, keeping an eye, I'm, like, aware I guess I could thank my mom for it, but I'm, like, thinking of, "Oh, I'm not gonna put my purse there," or I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch and make sure if I'm walking to my car," things like that, and it's things that, like, have become second nature to so many women. So I kinda wanna expand on that, how that's just, like, a huge running theme where, like, either female friendships, female sense of betrayal, even though without spoiling, it could be argued that she has also played a part in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanna expand on that.
I first to tackle the idea of female safety, that's a huge that's a huge element of the book. I wanted to explore the fears that I have as a woman in the world. I wanted to dig into where do these fears come from? Why do they persist? And are we born are you born a fearful woman? As you said, a lot of these are second nature. How many fears that you carry around in your head all day you're not even aware of? There's an awareness women have of, as you said, where to put your bag. Do you hold your keys a certain way in your hand when you walk to your car? Are you constantly checking over your shoulder? But this has become so routine. you're not even conscious that these are acts of fear for your own personal safety. And are you conditioned to be like this? And how does that affect your personal freedom and your personal sense of security in the world? So I wanted to explore that, and I wanted to see, are these fears warranted? Where do they come from? Society, our parents, our mothers, and to what degree are they warranted, and should we be as fearful as we are or not? So that was something that I was interested in exploring in a big scale and a small scale. And yes, and you mentioned female friendship. That's another theme I'm really interested in, and female obsession, which is very unique and specific to women. I think that female friendships are really different from male friendships.
Oh, yeah.
And
I don't think men, like, obsess over, like, the whereabouts of other
old
men.
friends.
Like, they don't yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I was interested in if you had a really intense friendship from childhood, a really formative friendship that really defined who you became as an adult. And then if you lost
Mhm.
touch with that friend, but then in adulthood met someone who triggered all those emotions that you haven't felt in a long time, what that would do to you. And I was interested in how obsession evolves and where does it come from, and how, and the root of it is often in these friendships from girlhood, and how some certain friendships that you have in your youth can really build out the mythology you have about yourself in adulthood, where in the novel you see some of Laura's patterns of behavior as an adult are informed by incidents from her youth or interactions that she had with a friend. So I was interested in how, what do we carry with us as an adult that came from an earlier part in our life that has lingered and formed the person we are today.
100%. I don't know if I can relate to Laura per se, but I can relate to like that sentiment where the friendship is it's so strong and it's becomes a part of who you are and your personality is shaped around that friendship, that relationship. And then what happens when that relationship is taken away from you? And it's I don't know, I don't want to compare it to loss, like a death of a loved one, but it's almost a loss of a friendship. It's almost just as painful because like there it's different pain. It's like just a different way of losing that person. But you're absolutely right because I there's been friends in my past where there's been falling out and it hurts. It absolutely hurts. But then it's yeah, you absolutely carry that forward. You carry that forward and then that's the person you are going forward versus the person you were with having them in your life. And either those memories and those parts of you are never going to resurface as you were with that person, or you're going to hang on to that and you're going to carry it forward for better or for worse. Unfortunately for Laura, it seems like it was a little PTSD that kind of resurfaced. And then even then when like during the investigation, like you see these little clues of and she's wait a second. It looks it looks bad, but that's the thing. It's just when it gives the big picture of it, if we want to go off on tangents, it's yeah, taking things out of context and just for the sake of figuring things out. You know, I love that you had a commentary on it added a commentary not only on like female safety, but also like female friendships, because I think that is there is it's yeah, of course, women are emotional, men are emotional too, but it's also yeah, between the relationships, which I've noticed also is that just from being with my husband, it's like we have our friend groups and we have the friend group, the text thread is with the women. And then it's like when we plan things, it's okay, we plan things amongst ourselves and then we tell the men, our spouses, our partners, this is what we're doing on this day. Like with or without kids, whatever, because we all like a couple of groups that I have, we all have kids. So it's really funny because I'm like, when we do an only girls thing, I'm gonna go off of tangents anyway. But when we do an only girls thing, my husband is like, "Why does it have to be only girls? Why can't why can't why aren't the men invited?" And I'm like, it's different because it's also another pocket of what women need. They love the girls' weekends. They love the girls' nights. Like we need that in our relationship. We get whatever we need out of it, and it's fantastic. Men don't need that, but it's so funny because I tell my husband, I'm like, you are welcome You are more than welcome. Nobody is stopping you from setting up a guys' night. If you wanna do that and you wanna leave me home with the kids, I am all for it because I understand if I need time to myself, if I need time with the girls, you need that's fine if you need that time. I totally am sympathetic to it. So, like, I love how in your story because it's like Dave, poor Dave, I don't know, he's kinda even it was like an early it was like a like, we'll segue because it was like they're only together for, like, what, less than 2 months so far, and so, yeah, it's like in a new relationship where things are still exciting and things are hot and new, and then definitely traveling with someone. I arguably that is where parts of people and, like, for them to go traveling at 6 weeks into the relationship, I was like, "Alright, get it," and then it was just poor Dave, he was just like a man about it, but he had certain things he had to pay attention to, like, certain motives, but yeah, it was I thought it was that kind of was also telling because he was just there, "Okay, how do I approach this, and how do I handle this?" And I enjoy that. It was I liked their relationship, but I also, like I felt for him, but at the same time, I'm like, I understood why his position. He was in a tough position.
He was in a tough position, and it was a new relationship. And I am interested in vacations and also resorts. Like vacations are supposed to be, they're these oxymorons. Like they're supposed to be relaxing and restful, but they often happen in a very compressed period of time. You have to schedule everything, and you need the weather to cooperate. There's all this forced togetherness. Ultimately, it's really stressful. It's really there's a lot of pressure to have a relax. It can be, have a lot. There can be a lot of pressure to have a relaxing vacation. And I was interested in throwing a new couple into that scenario and to see and to bring it to this sort of like climactic head, as well as at a resort, which is supposed to be this like beautiful, pristine, unspoiled natural beauty, but they're completely artificial and mass produced, and every room is the same. And so I was interested in that as well, of the kind of what's real and what's artificial, what's fantasy and what's reality, the assumptions we have about we've dreamed of dating the beautiful hot guy, and we finally in our adult life get to date the beautiful hot guy, and what is the reality of that versus so those kind of themes play out in different ways in the novel as well.
Yeah, no, I love the language that you used and how it was kinda like the thoughts entering Laura's mind that was presented to the reader. She was looking at things with rose-colored glasses, and then once everything started unraveling, she was like then she realized, "Oh, it's fabricated, and it's just for show." And it was, like, exactly how you said it was just, like, it was so fake and made up. She realizes that and then in the midst of trying to figure things out, and so, yeah, it was like I loved, like, how some of those moments, like, caught me where she was, like, taking moments to notice those things, and it was like you wanted to point that out to the reader, and it was just like I just remember reading it, and I was like, "Oh, shit, okay." Like, we're getting a little bit deeper, we're getting a little bit like it's unfortunately Laura and she's realizing things, and at the end of the day, I just felt for her because this one woman, this one incident, this one trip it just changed so much.
Unravels her whole life. I was interested. I was like,
Yeah.
can you unravel a person's life in 3 days?
It
And
wa
how could you do it in a way that's convincing and organic? And I was interested in the challenge of that, of step by step, what what would happen, and taking someone who is a bit of a worst case scenario, them on that journey. One of my favorite genres is what I call like woman going through something,
Yeah.
or woman having a
Women's fiction or women's going through something.
yeah, yeah. So this is
That's
something. Yeah, this
amazing.
is the
No.
story of Laura. Laura is living the life she thinks she's supposed to want at the outset of the book. Successful lawyer on the rise, great boyfriend, her own apartment, living the life in New York. And then, yeah, when this woman disappears on this vacation, her life begins to unspool, even though she thinks she's doing the right thing. And if you strip everything away, my hope is that the reader comes away with she actually choose the life she actually wants versus the life she thinks she's supposed to want.
Yeah, because it's like the world is her oyster. It's like oh,
Just step outside of your fear a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, because it's yeah, by the end of it, she's still also coping with like, what had happened over the past few days. So it's just yeah, it's a lot. I can't imagine. It's just she went through this trip and then this thing happened and she couldn't let it go, and then when she got home, it's yeah, back to reality, back to real life, and her actions, like, totally affected her real life. So it's kinda, like, bleeding into it, and it was just like there was a couple points where I don't know. So sometimes, like, when I read, books, I'm like to characters, I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
What are you doing?
But with Laura,
Don't go into
I
that.
understood it. I understood why. I understood why, and I was, like, rooting for her. What's gonna happen? Let's figure it out. I was like and I loved how towards the end she had a little female, like, solidarity. Someone told her, like, "No, I think it for the right if for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." Even at the end of the day, like, even if things were totally turned upside down for her, like, she had that little bit of the little teensy bit of validation of
Right. And
what
it's
speaks to the bigger picture, right?
and then that is the question. When you think something bad has happened, what is your responsibility as a citizen, as a person? Do you look the other way or do you take action? Are you supposed to be complacent? You think something serious is being ignored? And there is a resistance to that. There's a fear around getting involved in a stranger's life because
Yeah.
you don't know how it's going to impact yours. And so this Laura, in many ways, follower, she wants to be helpful because she thinks that's what she's supposed to do. So it also, yeah, explores that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Hopping I wanted to explore so I'm sure, like, with your experiences, your life in screenwriting or writing for TV and film or just TV. So, how did I want to talk about the research that you had to do for this. Did you approach that process like same as how you do with your other what you've had to do in the past, or is there anything fascinating? Because I imagine, like, okay, you the certain things you knew because like you experienced it, like you could put your feelings into it. But there was also probably some things that you had to kind of look up. I don't know if your Google search history is questionable or so I want to explore like the research. Was there anything fascinating that you learned, stuff like that?
Well, just as a television writer, my Google history is very disturbing. And I'm sure I'm on a list somewhere or several lists. So to start
They
with,
probably
yeah,
Google probably knows like your profession is okay. She's not on.
yeah. If you start, yeah, just any kind of cop show you're on, the stuff you're googling, it's really it can get dark. No, for sure, and that's a big part. That's a big part of the job. And you're right. The premise from the novel came from a real life incident that I mentioned earlier. So the spark was there, and the idea rolled around in my head for about a year. I was just living with that idea and thinking of what could happen with that. And so research wise, it was more about in terms of the story itself, it was more about learning more about the island and Bahamian culture because I'd been there, but only for a week. So it was more about learning more about the history and the language and the cultural festivals and things like that, just to get more of a sense of the color and texture of the place. But then
Mm,
the other aspect of it was just really just structure and how to approach arcing the story. And a lot of that just comes from, as you said before, reading a lot in the genre. I was already a huge fan, and as a television writer, I'm often sent thriller novels for potential adaptation. So
okay.
one of the things
Oh
I do
my
in my
god, how
work.
is that the dream perk of your job? That's a
No, it's fun. Like my agents will send PDF of a novel, and some producers are looking for a writer to adapt it. And so you basically read the book, break it down, and to see job is can this does this have legs to be an
yeah,
ongoing series? Can you
yeah,
flesh out the world? Can you elevate the stakes beyond a first season into multiple seasons,
yeah.
maintaining the same degree of suspense, that kind of thing. So I had been doing that for several years, and this was the reverse of that is actually breaking down the story to write into prose as opposed to the other way around.
I love that. That is so cool. Cause like, with, like, me doing this stuff, writing reviews and interviewing authors, I'm like, I get a lot of books, like,
Book mail.
titles yeah, titles that I might not otherwise pick them up. Like, I might not, because I wanna help authors, like, who aren't, like, the big names or the big publishers, like, I do both indie and trad. And because I've loved indie self-published books, and I've also been underwhelmed by traditional published books. So I'm like, I don't rule anything out. So I'm like, that is so cool that you had that part of your life where, like, things come to you and you're trying to, like, figure it out and you're trying to make that judgment. I can't imagine how hard that is though, but I love that 'cause it's, like, kind of feeding it's kinda like scratching that itch, right? And you see and then it's also maybe shaping how, like, your outlook, because you have to look at things you have to look at whatever comes across your desk, you have to look at it through a certain lens, but as the professional, but maybe as the reader, you might just enjoy it. But as
Absolutely.
the
And
pro yeah, as a
that
professional, you might be like, oh.
no, and there's so many books that I would stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning. I have to finish this. I have to find out the twist, and the twist is great, and I love it. And I'm like, oh, I want to do this. But then when I go to my whiteboards and I'll break down the scenes on index cards and
Yeah.
try to see, is there an engine here? Could it carry forward into multiple seasons? And it doesn't necessarily. Can I add something to make it? And that's what's so frustrating about adaptation. People often say, this book was so amazing. Why did it never make it to the screen?
Yeah.
And it often has nothing to do with how great the story is or how beautiful the writing is. It's just that TV is such a different medium that
Oh,
demand
yeah.
it's like a monster that just demands story and surprises and subversions
Yeah.
and constantly rising stakes. It's just like it's a different beast. And so some stories, thrillers often lend really well to TV, but
Mhm.
just because something reads really well doesn't mean someone investing 13 hours of their life
Yeah.
watching the show is it will have the same degree of satisfaction or payoff. So that's been an education to see that sometimes the greatest thrillers just don't work. And television especially. Films are one thing because you can tell a close-ended story, but television, you're trying to make it run for 100
Yeah.
episodes if you can.
It's yeah, almost the cliffhanger at the end of the chapter, at the end of the episode to make them yeah, because 'cause I'm one of those people who, like, I love an eye on that's adapted from literature, like, from books and stuff, and then my husband, we always have we after the kids go to bed, we set up and we're like, "Okay, we catch up on our shows." So, we have this whole ritual, so we know, and so I'm like, there's a handful of shows that we stick to, but there's a handful of shows that I'm just waiting for. I'm like, I hear things and I'm like, "Okay, that this has been signed, this has been commissioned, this has been, like, they're in production, they're in editing." I'm like, of course, Game of Thrones is definitely one of them, and I'm like joke about how it's like your toxic ex, like, you still go back to them because it's once House of the Dragon came out, we're like, "Oh, even though the last season of Game of Thrones was, like, not that great, we're still feral for House of the
Yeah, for the
Dragon." Like
world. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly, like the universe, and, like, we call it Hot D, call Hot D House of the Dragon. So it's just it's yeah, no, I totally understand that, like, the challenge. I totally and I appreciate that, like, what you guys have to go through because you're absolutely right. There's, like, amazing books out there that amazing storytelling and grab the readers and grab the audience, but then transferring it to, like, visual, to TV, to film, it just doesn't just like people just don't see it, and it's just, okay, I guess it's just is living its life as
As enough.
paper or
It's
book.
true.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, some of my favorite novels, it's funny, I'll be reading a novel and I'll just fall in love with it. I'm like, oh, I wish I could adapt this. And then the more I think about it, I was like, this would never work because the beauty is in the language. The beauty is in this imagery. The beauty is in this. It just won't stand up the way. And sometimes a thriller just has one great premise, and that's all you need, and then the world explodes around it, and you're like, this is an incredible television show, but not a great book. Is the other thing. Sometimes not great novels make incredible adaptations. So it's very strange. It's a very
Yeah,
strange
it's a
process.
shame because yeah, it's like everybody wants to like, "Oh, what's gonna make money? What's gonna make the most audience?" So that's also a part of it too. It's, "This is fantastic, but are people gonna get it? Are people gonna get hooked? Are people gonna go watch it? How big of a is our audience? And what network fits?" Stuff like that.
It's so
'Cause I
competitive.
know
There's 400 networks. People don't have a lot of time to devote to TV, and it's very competitive. And you want to grab their attention week to week. It has to be something that people want to come back to. Characters they love. You love House Stark or the Lannisters so much that you just want
Yeah,
to hang out with those guys, right?
I know, no, absolutely, I love that. I know because it's funny because so many people I just remember the drama that happened around the 8th season where it was like because the show finished before George R. R. Martin finished the series, of course, everybody's been waiting for. Like, because I read the books, and so it was like, some of my friends who were watching this show, they would call me and be like, "Wait a second, what does this mean?" And after a certain point, I was like, "There's nothing after this. I'm with you now." Like, I got nothing for you other whatever the book says because there's nothing after this. And it's really funny how you watch that and then you compare it to the book, but then you're like, "Wait a second."
I'm a big fan of the show as well, and I also found the final season to be not as strong as the
Yeah.
earlier seasons. I read this thing, so I'm paraphrasing it, but I read this thing that described that the reason the earlier seasons were so much better was because they were about systems, and the final season was about heroes and villains, like a cast of characters, like a hero's journey.
So I remember so many people were like, they were naming their kids like Khaleesi or whatever. And it was just like they were rooting for Daenerys. But it's kind of, if you didn't see where her story was going, you weren't paying attention. Because then, like, totally regretted it. There was so much backlash, but I was still like rooting for her. I was like, bitch, burn it all down. Like, what? I was still like, I get it. And it's just obviously it's unconventional, but I was like, you've been through enough. And these people have not been she gave everything. She gave a freaking dragon for crying out loud. Spoiler alert. I don't know. Maybe I'll cut this out. But yes, no, thank you for that. Cause like, yeah, exactly. It's just kind of going for like the hero journey
Mm-hmm.
versus because everybody they get sucked into that like that structure.
Yeah.
And then it's okay. Now once you understand, because that's what reminds me of I'm sure you've heard of Brandon Sanderson's work. He does like high fantasy and it's like he's world building. He's like fantastic at it. But yeah, it's a lot, but, like, he focuses on that, but somehow he does it, like, really well. Once you got the world and you got it settled, now on the journey, and I think I guess you could tell they were just rushing it, and
Or
with the
just simplifying it. In some ways, it's really hard to tell such a broad, sprawling story in a form that demands simplification, and they executed it so well. Although people were complaining in later seasons that they were too far away from, they weren't coming back to certain storylines often enough or whatever. And part of the problem is, yeah, it was written for television, that final season,
Yes.
as opposed to adapted.
Yeah, I think no, obviously, I'm sympathetic to the fact that they were adapting something that was novel, high fantasy novel, and they were adapting it to TV. Obviously, they have to substitute characters or they have to combine the characters. They can't, like, tell every single storyline because there's so much going on. But I totally think it was just, like, I could sympathize with other people's views that things were rushed because they were trying to finish it, and then you could tell that they spent their budget on the dragons and not on other things that they've spent in the past. It's no, I know. And it's the same it's like I said before, it's funny because I'm still waiting for House of the Dragon season 3. I'm still
You're still into the world, yeah.
yes, and even then I'm like I try to my best to like keep track of what gets signed and whatever. So I know they've got like a lot of side projects, a lot of spin-offs in the works, but I know it takes time. But at the same time I'm like, I don't know, it's been 4 years since I've heard anything. So it's again, it's like your insight, you know how it goes.
No, it's true, and it takes a long time, and it's a lot of money at stake is the other thing, is no one wants to put all that money onto a show and then
Oh,
have it tank. It's like hundreds of
100%.
millions of dollars.
Yeah. Oh my god, I know, it's that sucks because it's like how much art or how many stories out there have been dismissed. Somebody hasn't quite seen over that threshold of what is worth it. It's a shame because 'cause I'm like,
Absolutely.
there's so many stories out there and there's a million ways to tell the same story, and it's as cliche as it sounds, it's like either fantasy, historical, people of color, people with disabilities, whatever, like, there's so many stories to tell, and and not only it's still, like, publishing or books and TV and movies, it's also competitive, right? Like,
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
just
Because it's about commerce in the end, which is the frustrating part. But yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
necessary. Mhm.
Unfortunately, we could just make movies for who knows. So, no, you need good production, you need good actors, you need good writers, you need, like, people who are good at what they do, and yes, they deserve to be paid and
Yes.
whatever, but it's
And audiences are
it's
so savvy. Like audiences now expect a level of production value, and they can see bad CGI and call it out. The
uh,
story, like just the
spoiled now,
standards. We're
sorry.
spoiled, yeah. And our TVs are such good quality now, so you can't get away with it anymore.
Exactly. Oh god. Ugh. It's a double-edged sword, but it's just like, oh, we our entertainment, like for the audience, we get a lot of good stuff, but then, like, for you guys, it's so much harder, like,
It's
offer
so
that good
hard.
stuff.
It's true.
100%. Sorry, not sorry, I don't know.
No, but then
Step
you
up your
see,
Sandra.
I feel in a lot of ways TV in that regard is getting better because of that, right? Like the higher the
Yeah.
standard gets, when a show does break through, it's just so much better.
Yeah, because even it's just I don't know if how often you do this, but even if you, like, take a glimpse into something that was produced, like, 30, 40 years ago, it's funny to compare
Yeah.
and to see, like, how far we've come, like, even look at the Marvel movies. Oh, forget it. If you're not, like, at that standard with the superhero movie, if you're gonna go for a superhero movie, if you're not at that standard.
I know. And it's funny how a premise for a sitcom 20, 30 years ago was like, he's a single dad, he's got 3 kids, and that's the show.
Yeah,
Today, it's that could never be a show. You need
I don't
such a hook.
even then it was like, I don't know, Full House, even and then I started watching Fuller House, where it was just, like, the 2nd generation. It didn't hit the same.
Yeah.
It didn't hit the same, and it's just
No.
like I think, like, a lot of these shows are trying to hit for the bank on that nostalgia, but they can't it's so hard to recreate
That
that
lightning in a
sentiment, that
bottle. Yeah, a lot
feeling.
of that is like just the magic of the casting that you don't
Yeah.
know. You're taking about a bunch of, sometimes the biggest star from a cast is then outshone by all these newcomers who just have this
Yeah.
chemistry that you cannot predict.
Is that what you get what is it, lightning in a bottle? Is that
Yeah.
what you guys call it? Lightning in a bottle?
Oh, totally. Yeah, you hope for that and then you just can't predict it. And then when it happens, you're just on this like rocket ship. You're just we're on the ride along with it.
That's such a cutthroat that's such a high bar. That's something I'm just like, I have no desire to meet. Like, I don't I'm not even a shoot for that. I was like, cause that yeah, it's like, I that's like a whole world that I respect. I don't know what goes on in there, but I respect it. It's just like, cause I'm, like, digging through your mind and digging through, like, other people's brains and either authors or, like, authors, like I said before, who tried out novels after doing other things. It's like, I totally respect it because it's so much pressure, and it's like your evaluation, like, you perform is so measured by that, unfortunately. Like, you can slay, you can rock your shit, you can be a fucking boss at your job, but then if oh, the ratings, it's like you
Yeah.
did everything you needed to do, but then it's if you don't see that feedback, if you don't see those numbers, it's, "Oh, then this didn't go well," and you're I yeah.
It's as hard to make a hit show as it is to make a terrible show. It's as many people working 7 days a week, all day, all night. It's as hard. And I've been on shows that have done really well and on shows that haven't, and it's the same amount of work. It's the same amount of energy. And it's incredibly talented people, and there's just sometimes the luck aligns and things work out, and then sometimes they don't, and you can't predict it. And it's infuriating because you think the longer you do it, you'll figure out the formula, and it's like different every time. And that's what's great about it, but also it's like so infuriating.
It's like the trends. It's the trends, and it's I think, yeah, the internet is definitely a culprit because it's like I think I read somewhere or I heard somebody talk about, like, the what is it? Like, the magic almost, to put it lightly, is gone because it's like the internet is there and we're all, like, using the internet to promote things, and we see clips, and we see tropes, and we see all these things, but versus, like, years ago where you would get all of it, like, when you were there, like, in the moment, watching, going to the theater, sitting on your couch, waiting for that clock to chime, and it's absolutely right, like, filmmakers, entertainment makers are up against so many things just because we as a population have like, easy access to, like,
Easy access,
little sneak
distraction.
peeks and
Yeah.
yeah, not only distraction, but, like, sneak peeks and stuff like that where, like, okay, this is a
Spoilers.
sneak peek, so we're expecting like, whereas, like, the show, the final project would have been here, now the sneak peeks are here, now the marketing is here, and, like, now the final product is gonna be up here, and so I don't even touch that because 'cause I'm like, "You guys bless you guys, like, in that industry who have a passion for it and who keep working for it to bring entertainment to the audience," because I'm like, I imagine how difficult it's been, even also because things have changed so much in the past, like, 10, 20 years. It's just
It's true.
it's hard to keep up.
Social media has changed it too in terms of fans, especially in genre, fans having expectations for characters, for end games, relationships, and that weighs heavily. But if you engage, you're not serving your story. as well as you should be. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
new. It's great in terms of promotion, but it can also be challenging in terms of hurting the story making process.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna throw this at you. What were the most challenging parts to write? What were the most enjoyable parts to write?
The most challenging part was finishing the first draft, for sure. Because as you mentioned earlier, it's my first time out. I never done it. So it was really about overcoming self-doubt and having confidence in the storytelling and my abilities. That was really the challenge. And I read this great advice somewhere that said the purpose of your first draft is to figure out what you're trying to say, and the purpose of your second draft is to go back and make it look like you knew what you were doing all along. And that was really helpful. I feel like that often I think a
The
lot of
purpose of your
writers
first draft is to be a first draft.
to be
Like,
a first
yeah.
draft and
Yeah.
like to give yourself permission to make it bad, like to have to write poorly, just to finish it, just to get it out and put it, take it out of your brain and put it down on paper is
100%.
so
Yeah.
important. And but there was a lot of apprehension before starting the second draft. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I knew I had to improve it, but how? And when I read that advice, I was like, oh, just make it look like you know what you're doing. It was real actually, it unlocked something in my brain. Go back and make it all
Yeah.
intentional. Now you know where you're building, so make
You
it.
had to channel your filmmaker Sandra,
Yeah,
and they'll make it into novelist Sandra, right?
that's right. That's right. And
That's
as a
what I'm
producer,
saying. I'm like, just fake it till you make it. I don't know.
yeah, the imposter syndrome is there all the time. But yeah, and absolutely fake till you make it. And I just put your producer hat on and look at it now as an object and kind of slash and burn and be a little ruthless with it.
Yeah, a little cutthroat. It's okay. It's hard, but it's okay to be cutthroat against yourself. And then the fact that you are hopefully looking for like editors or betters or reviewers and hopefully getting extra eyes on that to catch things about your baby that you don't want to catch. Or like your mind is I've been working on this. We all know it. For those of us been in school, like we all know how it is to like write a paper and I need an extra pair of eyes on it because I've been looking at this too long. It's the same with like almost any type of work. So yeah, you need that editor, you need that fresh start, you need that fresh eyes, and you need that outside opinion to be like, this is something that maybe you didn't think about. And it's yeah,
Yeah,
and
and even
hopefully
learn
it'll make
like
the story better.
it. Oh, absolutely. And to be able to read your own work through the eyes of someone who doesn't care is so helpful. Like you're trying to grab someone who really is not invested in your story at all, and how do you make them invested, and how quickly can you get them hooked? You know, that
It
those
makes you
kinds of
work a little
skills.
bit harder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
I love that. I love that. No, I think it worked because it was like I said, The Ends of Things isn't like a long book, but I was like, in that short amount of time, I was like, oh, wait a second. Because like I got immersed in Laura's story and like even the short little snippets that we got in her background with Dave, I felt for Dave, but I was like also excited about I was like, oh, going on this trip with your boyfriend. But then you snip in I just think it was really structured really well because as the reader we're getting to know her situation, but then we like get little peeks into her like her background, what makes her and like get little clues as the story goes as to like why she like
Why
explaining
she's
her
the way she is. Yeah,
actions.
and it's
Yeah.
funny with Dave. A lot of people have told me, "Oh, Dave's such a jerk. I don't like him."
I
And
don't
it's funny because I like when I look at what he did or didn't do, I was like, he's just like a normal, like he was just reacting in the moment. His job was important to him. He's like and this is a new relationship. They don't know each other
yeah.
very well.
But
I'm
only been
with you.
together for 6 weeks. Like they weren't like together for a year or anything. It
No,
was
I
just
know.
like
I'm with you. So I have a lot of compassion for Dave because I'm like, he's just trying to get through
he's
this
just a
trip.
dude.
He's just a
He's
dude.
just a man.
He's a bro. He's a bro just trying to get through this vacation.
Yeah, and he's only been there like cuz she yeah, it's mentioned that she has been working there longer than him, but he had more experience, so he
Yeah.
like was higher up
A
in the
little
chain of
higher
command.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just like I sympathize with him. I don't think he did anything wrong. I think it was like weird that he was like hiding certain things from her, but it was like also he didn't know what was safe to share. Like
What's
he
that?
didn't
Yeah.
yeah. And it was like yeah, I didn't no, I wasn't mad at Dave. I was mad at Diana. Right? It was, oh, girl. Okay. What advice do you have for Laura?
Great question. I would say I would throw back something that Dave says to her in the book. He says, in terms of being a catastrophizer, he says, yeah, bad things are going to happen, but it's never the bad thing you expect. And
Mm,
I find that to be really true. I also identify as a bit of a catastrophizer. I didn't realize until I wrote the book and read it back to myself. I was like, oh my God, I have a tendency to sometimes imagine the worst case scenario, and this is
yeah.
not good. And often when I'm doom scrolling or catastrophizing and I'm imagining bad outcomes, when if bad things do happen, it comes out of nowhere, and it's unpredictable. And so I tell myself, like, you shouldn't worry, because the thing you're worrying about isn't actually going to happen. Something else is going to happen. Good, sometimes bad, but never the thing that you think it's going to be. So Laura, I would say, don't waste so much time worrying, because you can't predict what's going to happen next.
That's solid advice, even for anybody. But no, you're so right because it's oh, don't add another level to it. It's so unnecessary to be like you're trying to like you're picturing the worst that can happen, but then there's another layer. It's like, oh wait, what if something happens that I wasn't even picturing? And it was like just let it all go. And that's easy for me to say because I have a tendency to live my life unbothered, but sympathize with a character like
Maybe you're
who's
more like a
like,
Diana.
it pro- what's the big deal?
Yeah.
What? So she's that's weird. What are you doing? Yeah. No, yeah, it could be, but I would hope that I wouldn't be. I hope that I would not.
In the sense of being a bit fearless, in a sense of being unbothered, in the sense of being able to live in the moment and
Yeah,
enjoy the moment.
I know. That's why I'm kinda like I felt like when Laura was, like, so obsessed with her, like, "Why is she here alone? What's she doing? Is she okay?" And it's just, "Girl, just mind your own business," and just it's just kinda but, we didn't really touch on her career, but it's like, maybe that's a lawyer in her where she's just, "Wait a second."
It's funny, yeah. Like, she writes contracts, and as a contract writer, your job is to imagine what's the worst thing that could happen to my client, and how can I protect them against it in these clauses of a contract. So it actually is a superpower for her professionally. It's just it's disastrous in her personal life.
I know it, girl, you gotta turn it off.
You got
Or I don't know, I guess I don't blame her for not turning it off because it's like, the way things looked, it was like, yeah, like, maybe we should be worried.
yeah.
It's like but then, yeah, it's like, I'm not
If you're with someone the moment they disappear, there is a kind of a
yeah.
degree of sort of citizenship or sense of responsibility or obligation.
Yeah,
So I like of that.
exactly. What kind of person am I if I just,
Am
like,
I? Yeah. What kind of
blow it
person am
off?
I? And to test your relationship in light of that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh god, I don't wanna pronounce okay, Sandra Fikowska.
Fialkowska.
Sandra
That's it.
Fialkowska. Where can we find you online and on social media?
So I have a website, sandra-c.com, and I'm also on Instagram.
Perfect. Are you working on anything that you could talk about? What's next for you?
Sure. I have a proposal for another domestic thriller, and it follows multiple perspectives. There's a mystery that follows multiple perspectives in an affluent neighborhood in Los Angeles.
Oh, there's a lot you could do with that. Is that where you're based now, where you're, like,
Yeah.
exploring yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
find
that's
LA
gonna
to
be
be an incredibly fascinating. It's a city of extremes in every way. It's just such a fascinating melting pot city.
yeah, I can imagine. Sandra, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And thank you for your honesty and your authenticity, all that good stuff. And if and when you're ready to talk about your next project, feel free to come back. I'd love to chat with you again.
Thank you so much. I would love that, and this was a lot of fun.
And there you go. That was Sandra Fialkowska talking about her book, The Ends of Things. That book is available now. Check out the show notes where you can find links to purchase the book and where to find Sandra online and on social media. Rate, review, subscribe, find Cantina Book Club online and on social media. Subscribe on your favorite podcast player and on YouTube so you never miss a beat. And I'm always posting updates as well. Check out cantinabookclub.com if you need book recommendations or something to add to your reading list. I've got all types of genres up there. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening.